Ah, what are you laughing at?
I'm not laughing.
Now you have like
I'm happy that you won the competition.
90-Day Fiancé's Jasmine revealed her pregnancy to Gino on Happily Ever After, and it was absolutely more brutal than I expected. Warning: the following contains spoilers for the 90-Day Fiancé. Happily Ever After? Episode Nobody Puts Baby in a Corner. Stream it with an HBO Max subscription and read at your own risk. Knowing ahead of the season that Gino Palazzolo and Jasmine Pineda would end their marriage certainly lessened the blow of watching it unfold on 90-Day Fiancé. Happily Ever After. I was prepared for Gino's temporary fling with Natalie, and even the fight that went down between her and Jasmine. What I wasn't prepared for was her pregnancy reveal scene to Gino, which was way harder to watch than I expected. 90-Day Fiancé viewers first officially learned Jasmine was pregnant when she walked out on stage during the Last Resort Season 2 tell-all, looking pretty far along. She was confident and somewhat cocky about her new relationship with Matt Branasterianu, but the latest scene in HEA showed she was far less confident about it all when it happened. Jasmine invited Gino to Matt's house to reveal she was moving to Florida, but that wasn't all. After I speculated that Jasmine knew she was pregnant with Matt's child the previous week, she told Gino that she was expecting and wanted to let him know before he found out from tabloids, other cast members, or ahead of the tell-all for The Last Resort. Gino congratulated her, and after a little bit of talking, went out the door. It seemed like a normal response, but Jasmine knew better. She began to cry and watched him pull away out the window, explaining that was the worst reaction she could have gotten. She knew that when Gino is at his calmest in the face of news like that, it only meant he would have a more extreme reaction when he was in private. Gino breaking down in his confessional broke my heart. I'll admit that as a longtime 90-Day Fiancé fan, I haven't had a ton of sympathy for Gino throughout his journey with Jasmine. He knew she was a jealous person throughout their relationship. Yet, he continued to push the envelope by sending pics of her to his ex, and by having a bachelor party despite her specific instructions not to. All that said, once they were officially married, it seemed as though Gino had put his past behind them and was ready to start a family with Jasmine. They announced their intention to start trying for children shortly after their marriage, but months later, they were no longer sleeping together, and her situation with Matt began. To see Gino cry and finally admit for the first time that he felt his whole relationship was a lie was brutal. It got even worse when Jasmine admitted she knew the news broke Gino's heart because he hoped with their marriage he'd finally have a child of his own. I'll admit I got a little misty-eyed on the couch watching it all unfold, which I certainly didn't expect to happen with this storyline at all. We'll see how this storyline continues with Jasmine on her way to Florida as 90-Day Fiancé. Happily Ever After continues on TLC on Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm hoping to hear Gino can find some solace in what looks to be hard times ahead, and that things aren't as vitriolic between him and his ex as they were at the Last Resort tell-all. Mick Jost is a content producer for Cinema Blend with his hand in an eclectic mix of television goodness. Star Trek is his main jam, but he also regularly reports on happenings in the world of Star Trek, WWE, Doctor Who, 90-Day Fiancé, Quantum Leap, and Big Brother. He graduated from the University of Southern Indiana with a degree in journalism and a minor in radio and television. He's great at hosting panels and appearing on podcasts if given the chance, as well. On 90-Day Fiancé, Happily Ever After? Season 9, Episode 11, we got it in spades. Surprise pregnancies, a doomed couple's trip, a friendship feud that could have been lifted straight from Bravo, and Betty doing what Betty does best, inserting herself into conversations that don't involve her. The episode wasted no time dropping the bombshell of the night. Gino showed up at Matt's house after a month of silence from Jasmine, convinced she wanted him back. In his head, this was going to be the romantic reunion producers would use for promos. Instead, it turned into his worst nightmare. He bristled at even having to set foot in Matt's place, because in Gino's version of events, Matt is the reason the relationship fell apart. As if Jasmine hasn't been burning this thing down with a flamethrower since day one. Then, seeing boxes stacked up, he actually thought she was moving back in with him. Jasmine insisted she hadn't planned it and admitted she was worried about him, but Gino stormed off, muttering in the car about betrayal. It was messy, raw, and honestly, the final nail in a relationship that's been toxic from day one. And while Jasmine was finally decisive, Gino was left with nothing but his delusions and his hats. If Gino and Jasmine's implosion was loud and dramatic, Kara and Guillermo's demise was quiet and devastating. They embarked on a couple's trip to work through their issues, but vacations don't cure fundamental trust issues. Their conversations felt heavy, like two people stuck in quicksand. By the end of the trip, reality set in. They admitted they weren't working and decided to split. Kara broke down sobbing in her confessional. Guillermo's eyes welled up as he tried to hold it together, and yet the scene had more dignity than most 90-day breakups. They agreed that their son, Nico, deserved two happy parents, even if it meant co-parenting instead of staying married. For once, a couple in this franchise made the mature choice, and while it was heartbreaking, it was also refreshing. That level of maturity didn't exactly carry over to the next duo, though. Elizabeth and Loren finally sat down to hash out their issues, and if you thought you'd accidentally changed the channel to the Real Housewives of Miami, you weren't alone. Elizabeth is ready to move on. Elizabeth came in offering a hug. Loren swerved it like she was dodging traffic, and suddenly we were in icy territory.
The issue?
Messages, rumors, and the eternal question of who trashed whose husband more. Loren suspected Elizabeth had been whispering in Andre's ear about her. Basically, it's the kind of drama you expect in a middle school cafeteria, except with subtitles. The whole thing was petty, defensive, and entertaining, much like watching a slow-motion car crash. Neither woman wanted to budge. Lauren's icy glare could have frozen a Starbucks iced latte. Elizabeth was playing defense like she was on trial, and the producers were probably popping champagne. In the end, they agreed to scale back the arguing, But the bigger issue here is that this doesn't even feel like 90-Day Fiancé anymore. Watching friends hash out beef instead of couples working through cultural and marital clashes is pure Bravo energy. Thankfully, Brandon and Julia closed the episode with a storyline that felt like classic 90-day chaos. Julia gets help from her father-in-law. Their redo wedding finally arrived, but before Julia could even say "I do," the storm cloud known as Betty was circling. 90-Day Fiancé. Happily ever after? Star Gino responds as Jasmine reveals she is expecting a baby with Matt. Gino Palazzolo, Jasmine Pineda's former husband, was left reeling as she revealed a bombshell on the September 14th episode of 90-Day Fiancé. Happily ever after? She sobbed as she announced in a private meeting that she and her partner Matt Brownies were going to Florida and, even more astonishingly, that she was expecting Matt's child. Gino looked rattled by the news. He was already suffering mentally after his marriage had split up. The fact that the pregnancy wasn't planned, however, only muddied the waters of their already tumultuous relationship. Their open marital agreement, adultery allegations, and emotional distance had left their marriage hanging by a thread for years before the discovery. Gino's response, though, was quite formal, and there was an inferred mix of one who betrays me, one who stabs my back with a knife, and the unexpected emitted from days only to come. Jasmine, on the other hand, owned up to the pain she caused while insisting that their chapter was closed. She still had feelings for him. In addition to its content, this scene from 90-Day Fiancé, Happily Ever After, has turned into one of the most dramatic turns in the show's history because of what it shows about truth, loyalty, and the complicated consequences that arise when relationships venture into uncharted territory. The news of Jasmine's pregnancy is not only personal, it marks a sea change in how the public views them and Gino's assessment of their prior commitments. By revealing the pregnancy and her relationship with Matt, she permanently changed the course of events. It was clear from Gino's response, first quiet, then grief and bewilderment, how completely he felt caught off guard. And for Jasmine, choosing this method of breaking the news shows that she's prepared to start the next phase of her life hurt. There was a lengthy pause on 90-Day Fiancé, Happily Ever After, when Jasmine first told Gino about her pregnancy with Matt. Good for you, he murmured simply, before the emotional outburst struck in private. Gino said in confessional moments that he felt deceived by the timing and concealment of the pregnancy, as well as by the pregnancy itself. His expression was one of disbelief, as if he had hoped for something else. Gino later asked if Jasmine's claims about their marriage were true. He considered whether what was meant to be reciprocal became out of balance as he wrestled with their open marriage contract. 90-Day Fiancé. Happily ever after? Gino was clearly upset that Jasmine presented continuing to live with Matt and the child as the conclusion of their chapter. There was an obvious sense of grief, remorse, and loss. Jasmine told Gino that she loved him, but had to start all over, even though the pregnancy wasn't planned. She said the bond with Matt was now too strong for her to continue with Gino. 90-Day Fiancé. Happily ever after? Star emotional honesty, tears, and sensitivity underscored exactly what was at stake for her. She felt driven to do what was right for the future. Even if she had no desire to hurt Gino, it didn't make it any less lousy that she had decided to drive all the way down and break the news in person, in this pretense of a show of respect. She explained that she wanted Gino to know from her instead of through media reports or gossip. Jasmine stressed that, despite the loss of their marriage, she wants Gino to be able to find some peace and does not want the news to become part of any definition of him or their entire relationship. On 90-Day Fiancé. Happily ever after? Julia Trubkina revealed plenty about one of the most private periods of her life, bringing viewers into a reproductive clinic with her family. Discussions of medical procedures, deadlines, and the bigger question of whether Julia and Brandon want to have kids at all took center stage in the stressful and emotional moment. At the visit, the doctors recommended removing a uterine polyp, Julia's first experience with anesthesia. She said that this added to her worry because she was also worried about health effects and whether doing something would make her more pregnant than if she did nothing. Rather than rush into treatment, the pair was told to think long and hard about their options at home. This candid conversation brought to light the emotional toll of making family planning decisions under duress, in addition to the medical component. For Julia, the experience was about claiming her independence while juggling the expectations of her family and spouse, not only about becoming a parent at recommendations. During Julia's examination, doctors found a uterine polyp and recommended its surgical removal under anesthesia. Since she had never had such a treatment done before, Julia acknowledged that she was anxious. The physicians cautioned that although it would increase her chances of getting pregnant, there was no guarantee of success. Medical professionals urged 90-Day Fiancé. Happily ever after? Stars Julia and Brandon to consider their options in private, whether that meant continuing fertility therapy or choosing not to have children at all, rather than pressuring them into treatment right away. The 90-Day Fiancé. Happily ever after? Couple was also warned by the experts that time is an issue in fertility planning, even though Julia is still in her early 30s. Though they noted that waiting too long could limit alternatives later, they emphasized that decisions shouldn't be hurried. An already emotional situation was made even more stressful by this well-balanced advice, which left Julia divided between her personal reluctance and the medical options. Julia's insistence on having the last say over her body was the 90-Day Fiancé. Happily ever after? Episode's most notable aspect. She stated that she was under a lot of pressure to undertake reproductive treatments and surgery, particularly when she was the one taking the physical risks. Her family was shocked at this revelation, as they had never heard her assert her positions so strongly. Visibly taken aback, Brandon repeated his vow to be there for her in any type of treatment or surgery, along with whatever happens after that, if she chooses it. An unresolved conflict emerged from the conversation, striking a balance between Julia's independence and the couple's shared life goals. Fans were left wondering how Julia and Brandon would eventually reconcile their divergent views on starting a family, because no final decision had been made in the plot. 90-Day Fiancé Season 8 cast members Stephanie Davison and Ryan Carr appeared almost 3 years ago, but their lives have changed since. Self-proclaimed cougar Stephanie from Michigan had met Ryan during a vacation in Belize. Despite their 25-year age gap, Stephanie chose to get married to Ryan by bringing him to the U.S. However, midway into the season, Stephanie and Ryan's relationship ended, and she moved on with his cousin, Harris, instead. Because Stephanie, Ryan, and Harris were never on the tell-all, their storyline never had a conclusion. In the wake of 90-Day Fiancé Season 10, It's time to revisit Stephanie and Ryan's relationship. IT was during her own tell-all style sofa talk with Steph Instagram session that 52-year-old Stephanie revealed that she and Ryan had broken up as far back as August 2020, even before the season started filming. According to Stephanie, she informed 90 Day Fiancé producers, but they continued filming anyway. She even flew to Belize in October 2020, where Ryan allegedly assaulted Stephanie in a stealthing incident. The reason behind Stephanie and Ryan breaking up was that something changed with this coronavirus pandemic and him not having any money, not having any means to provide for his family. However, Stephanie apparently stayed on 90 Day Fiancé to promote her skin envy clinic business. Supposedly, Stephanie was never romantically involved with Harris, who had traveled 6 hours to meet Stephanie as soon as Ryan had fled on 90 Day Fiancé. The Harris story was only 2% true, according to Stephanie, who was bitten severely by the sandflies. In addition, she blamed the production team for manipulating her. While her slurred speech and exhausted look could have been confused for being on drugs, the effect came from Stephanie filming for 15 hours and the steroids and antihistamines she took for bug bites. She wanted Harris to come to the U.S. on a work visa and not a K-1 visa to help his family. Stephanie was supposedly on good terms with Harris's wife, Emma, and had also sent her a computer as a Christmas gift. In May 2021, Stephanie revealed that she was still legally engaged to Ryan. She then said that the couple was waiting until December 2021 for her engagement to Ryan to be considered null and void. Amidst this, Stephanie claimed that her weight loss clinic business injections may prevent COVID-19. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel called on Stephanie to retract those false claims. It seems that Stephanie eventually reached an agreement with the state of Michigan, which was reported by Cinema Blend. In the meantime, Stephanie started taking long sabbaticals from social media. Ryan has largely disappeared from the public eye. The Grand Rapids resident stepped away from Instagram again in October 2021 when Stephanie wished her followers a happy Halloween in a glamorous Medusa costume. However, Stephanie did make a mind-boggling comeback by posting a now-deleted selfie with her and O.J. Simpson. In her caption, "Time to get away again," for unsurprisingly, Stephanie deleted her post with O.J. Even if it was for controversy, Stephanie and Ryan's relationship was very memorable on 90 Day Fiancé Season 8. While Stephanie may joke that she's a victim of reality TV, there's no doubt she has benefited from the fame. There's no indication of her appearing in a future season of 90 Day Fiancé, but she's in full influencer mode and hasn't had any significant controversies in a couple of years. Knowing Stephanie, that could end at any moment.